This episode was the result of a partnership with YouthBridge Community Foundation through its Think Big for Kids grant. This project by St. Louis Story Stitchers titled Perception Isn't Always Reality will create a public service announcement campaign as trusted messengers about mental health stigmas.
Come stop and take a trip down on my block where you see hidden potential, young minds sharper than Ginsu, and ain't afraid to speak their mind if they got something against you. We standing with you, we tackle issues like civic pride. Hate will cease to exist, let's put our differences aside. From my side to your side, from Dutchtown to South Side, from Penrose to North Side, from Benton Park to Old North, the West End to West Side. We blessed when we step out, we stand down, rise up, stand together, wise up.
This is StitchCast Studio, produced by St. Louis Story Stitchers in St. Louis, Missouri.
In this week's episode, our StitchCast sits down with Dr. Julie Gary, Bureau Chief of the St. Louis City Health Department.
They say who that, but you already knew that. That be them story stitches, story stitches, story stitches, story stitches, story stitches.
Well, I just want to say thank you to everybody for tuning in to another episode of StitchCast. My name is Emira. I am your host today, and I am accompanied by some wonderful youth council leaders.
Yep.
Absolutely.
What's the word?
Wealth and prosperity.
And our very, very, very special guest, Dr. Julie Gary. How are you today?
Good. In the house.
Definitely. So, we've done our research on you, but the people listening have not. So if you could just give us a brief description of who you are, where you come from, and what you're doing now.
Absolutely. So my name is Dr. Julie Gary. I'm currently the Bureau Chief for Behavioral Health for the City of St. Louis Department of Health. I was born in Missouri a long time ago on a farm. So I kind of grew up poor, and I've been blessed by God to kind of stand in the gap on certain issues over the years. So I came out of college at Notre Dame, which is where I went to undergrad, and I was in the military. So I'm a veteran. I was in the Army, Air Defense Artillery. And then coming out of that, I came back to St. Louis and did a degree that kind of combined my military service with my undergrad medical degree. So I chose public health. So I've kind of been back in St. Louis working in public health for about 22 years. I was married to Dr. Lewis Gary, who also worked in health around St. Louis, East St. Louis. He was the ER director in East St. Louis for about 15 years. He passed away in 2020, so we'll talk about that today and how that's impacted the work that I'm doing now. And we have three biracial kids, 27-year-old named Isaiah, and then I have a 22, almost 23-year-old named Elijah, and then I have a 19-year-old daughter named Jordan.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for that backstory. Some things that we actually didn't know that you shared with us.
Agreed. And I think y'all actually being pretty modest. We read and we read and we read.
Hyper
and
up.
you were like a real life Tom Cruise or something. Like, you've lived so much life and done so much. So thank you for all the work that you do, first of all, and all the things that you have done. We did also read that you had a PhD in philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
As working at the Bureau, how often do you use what you've learned in philosophy and what you do now?
Yeah, it's interesting. So as I was talking to some of you before we went on air today, quotes and motivation and stories are a big part of who I am and how I interact with people and how I influence my team of 13 that work in behavioral health in the city. So the philosophy that I have around this is when someone presents themselves in front of you on a daily basis, whether it's somebody you're interacting with on the bus, on the street, in your neighborhood, they all have a story. And that's why I tell mine. That's why when I just introduced myself, I said, well, I've gone through a loss in the last few years. it's important for people to know I'm a veteran because there are certain like mental health components to that. But it's important for us to understand that each one of us has stories that impact the way we show up every day. Whether it's me sitting in this position for the city of St. Louis, or it's you as a young person, as a group leader for Story Stitchers. It's important that we understand that everyone we come across has a story, and how we interact with them can have a positive influence on that story or a negative influence. And so it's important that as much as we can, we show up and have a positive influence on people, because we just don't know the burdens that they're carrying.
Absolutely. And I too want to say thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And everything you're doing and everything you've done. Definitely amazing. And I just wanted to kind of piggyback off of that question about philosophy and ask, how can we use philosophy in the currently to help destigmatize mental health and getting health care for, mental health problems?
Well, I think it's, so that's why when I show up, I tell my story first, right? So when we share ourselves and share the events that have happened in our life, or share what we're dealing with on a daily basis, we influence other people to do the same thing. So an example of that for me is I do training for city employees that go out into the community. And when I do that, I typically start when I introduce myself, and as I'm going through kind of crisis response training and self-care and burnout and kind of those kinds of trainings, I tell my story so that people then say, okay, well, she's standing up there in a nice dress or a suit, and she's telling us that she's been through these difficult things in her life. And what it influences people to do then is to tell you their story. So what has happened by me sharing my story as a part of this job over the last year is that I have city employees or random citizens who are like, hey, thank you so much for sharing that you went through this hard thing in your life. I want to tell you what I'm going through right now. Can you help me figure out how to navigate this? So we interact with people in a way that makes them comfortable to share their story, but we also do so it's a no judgment zone with grace and compassion, so that no matter what they're going through, hopefully they're willing to share that, and they can build confidence in us that we can help them access the resources they need to deal with those issues.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Go ahead.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's that time again. Time for another StitchCast Studio Arts Interlude. That's right, we about to pick the city up. This week, we have a Story Stitchers original song entitled Prairie Therapy.
I admit I ain't never been to a prairie. If I tell my guys where I'm going, they probably tell me they worry, cause where we from ain't unpeaceful about the pieces they carry. And even when situations got scary, I never scaried. I dealt with the repercussions of living near folks that do not know nothing but being tough. If they call you bluff, don't be bluffing. I ain't judging, no. My people far from perfect, but I love them, no. They only know how struggle go. I'm trying to show them other roads, cause back at home I feel the tension in the undertones, but here it's nothing close. I see buffalo, I'm like, what are those? This vacation that I take from war on crime, place of crime is never vacant. I work overtime to sober minds. So alive is how the earth is, skies clearer, grass greener, world perfect. Make it hurt to see how worse it gets when I return to pollution, shooting and traps. And I know I gotta go back, but before I gotta do that, if they wondering where I'm at, I'm just
relaxing and enjoying life, with the sun out and shining bright, with the plants and the trees, the bugs and the bees, and I don't mind if it's a rainy night. Relaxing and enjoying life, with the sun out and shining bright, with the plants and the trees, the birds and the bees, and I don't mind if it's a rainy night.
As I walk through these gates, the grass changed my landscape with confidence. They stand tall and straight like a wall of faith. We call this place the passion, a prairie. No worries, all the burdens you bury with one breath are released into the essence of time, bringing new life to your measureless mind. What once was so heavily despised became the niche to your prime. A butterfly sheltered by the hood, boy, but I knew that you could. Surface to surface, then dig deeper in the soil where you were planted. Weeds and flowers don't go hand in hand, but they handed you the mantle, then tried to dismantle you, but you took the stance in the garden when it was so unmanageable. So now it's time for you to hatch and lead a cocoon and go and lead your platoon.
Relaxing and enjoying life, with the sun out and shining bright, with the plants and the trees, the bugs and the bees, and I don't mind if it's a rainy night. Relaxing and enjoying life, with the sun out and shining bright, with the plants and the trees, the bugs and the bees, and I don't mind if it's a rainy night.
I can't hear myself think I need to get away and put an entry in my journal what I did today. I never seen weeds tall as these, still I feel the breeze. The native grasslands, a few trees. It's more than a matter of biodiversity. A place where time sits still, no sense of urgency. I left my cell in the city and did it purposely. Deserve to be free with the birds and the bees. So naturally, there's plenty of rainfall and wildflowers, mild showers, and plants growing by the hour. Long-term management is essential. Conserving the landscape is good for the mental. And I'm
relaxing and enjoying life, with the sun out and shining bright, with the plants and the trees, the bugs and the bees, and I don't mind if it's a rainy night. Relaxing and enjoying life, with the sun out and shining bright, with the plants and the trees, the bugs and the bees, and I don't mind.
Space and time with the rhymes we create. Therapeutic is the music so the minds can relate. See me shine when the shade get thrown at me from that hate. It don't really make no difference, it just lets me know how great I can feel about myself, even if nobody else can co-sign. Gotta get away from the dope and the gunplay, that's where I was when I wrote mine. The seasons change, things are strange. 2020 going grain, just cause you heard don't bring the pain. Get washed away up in the rain. Plant the seed humanity, the enemy is vanity. Singing is believing, but vision you see, what can it be? A scholarship to college, maybe a trade can get you knowledge. Your experience compile it while others spit vitriolic. Negative full of malice, no problem, we seek a challenge. This Prairie can soothe the hood attitude and bring balance. Watch me stitch up a story, but sign it as story stitches. My lyrics be on 1,000 so viewers can get the picture.
Relaxing and enjoying life, with the sun out and shining bright, with the plants and the trees, the bugs and the bees, and I don't mind if it's a rainy night. Relaxing and enjoying life, with the sun out and shining bright, with the plants and the trees, the bugs and the bees, and I don't mind if it's a rainy night.
I just had a question that formulated while you were talking about the training that you create for the people that work for you, and it kind of made me remember the last person that we had on our podcast, and she works with
Dr. Monty.
Yeah, Dr. Monty.
Actually worked.
Dr. Monty's my boss.
Oh, well. Well, now my question feels a bit different, but it's okay. I was gonna say, with that in mind, I can imagine that working with people that have issues in mental health or need resources and access to mental health procedures that would help them in their everyday life, I imagine that can cause a wear and tear on you and your team. Story Stitchers loves what we've been talking to you and Dr. Mighty about, and we kind of want to emulate that, but of course be wary about ourselves and how we present ourselves going forward. So is there something that you guys do to like support each other, to keep each other uplifted so that you can continue to be in the best mental condition to help other people?
Absolutely. So, well, I mean, one of the things my team says about me is they've never had a boss who asked them if they're okay so much, because the things we do on a daily basis are heavy. So one of the things I could do for you guys that we do for all city employees, and that we do for our team specifically, and lots of other community partners, is we talk to them about self-care and burnout and being mindful of ourselves and how we are today, right? So whether it's like setting an app on your phone that a reminder pops up and says, check in with yourself right now, how are you feeling? And you know, you select all the feelings you're having right now. It names a lot of them for you. And then there's a follow-up page that says, what are these feelings related to? Are they related to your relationship? Are they related to school? Are they related to work? So you can really get at what's going on with you at that particular moment, and you understand where the feelings are stemming from and things that you might be able to do related to that. So a lot of times it's just identifying the feeling and then identifying what it's related to. And then we also do like a self-care class. So self-care looks different for each one of us. For me, it's exercise, it's being outside. So I was super excited when you guys were like, we're doing this at the Turkish shelter at Tower Grove Park. I was like, heck yes, I'm getting out in nature today because I love being out here. And you're lucky I didn't bring my basketball clothes. So I think it's important to understand, first of all, be able to read yourself and understand like, okay, how am I really today? And being honest with yourself if you're not your normal self. Like I've gotten a lot better at that. And I think you do as you grow older. I used to be, when I was young, like, you know, in the Army, kind of willing to grind through everything. But that's not always a good thing, right? So I think we've gotten to this position in society where we are more kind of open about mental health, and by telling stories and by sharing those stories with each other, we reduce the stigma because people become more comfortable talking about it. And then if it's us kind of responding to these situations all the time, if we are able to read ourselves and we're like, I'm not my best today, sometimes we're not even really sure why. Like my daughter, I know, has come to me a couple times and she says, you know, I'm not really feeling my best today. And she's like, I really don't know why. And, you know, I just explained to her, like, there are days like that where, you know, like you're feeling sad for some reason. You can't really pinpoint what it is. But you know for yourself, like, what are some things that make you happy, whether it's cooking or being outside or playing sports or spending time with your friends or family or listening to music or writing or reciting poetry, like whatever it is for you. Those are the days when you have to find a section of your day to do that. So for us at work, sometimes we don't have windows in our office. So sometimes but there are parks across the street. So sometimes it's just getting outside and taking a 15-minute walk to decompress, or putting on my headphones and listening to music in the office or something like that. So being able to read yourself, number one, and then understanding what works for you and like literally scheduling it out in your day to do it. Those are some things I would recommend.
To piggyback off of that, one thing that I've been learning on my own journey is understanding where the source of happiness is for all of us. And one thing that I've learned, especially in my journey in Buddhism as well, is that happiness isn't found in the absence of our problems, but it's found in the navigation through challenges and finding it through our problems. Being able to face those challenges wholeheartedly and go deeper into it and understand why we're having these issues and find the happiness within the issue itself rather than the absence of it. But with you being busy and well accomplished, one, I wanted to ask, how does that feel to be as accomplished as you are? But also, how can you fit the management of your mental health in your day-to-day life with you being so busy and being so accomplished?
Well, thank you for that, for recognizing my accolades. But I honestly, I'm just like a regular person. So while people look at me and say like, wow, her life is so great, she has this position at the city, I'm not perfect. And so I do have parts of my life that I'm not great at. And so that's where I spend like a lot of my reflection time. And you know, one piece of that is from a financial perspective, my life has changed a lot in the last few years, related to the loss of my spouse and still having 3 kids, and 2 of them are in college. So, and that's not always pretty, right? So that's the thing I probably like place a lot of stress in my life on, or I wouldn't say worry or stress, but the things I spend time reflecting on, but what I've done for myself is I've slowed that reflection down, because what I've learned is that I'm getting a lot more if I slow down and reflect in terms of personal growth than I do if I rush to make financial decisions. So that's part of it. But I also schedule things into my day. So I start my day off. I'm big into my faith as well. So I start my day off reading the Bible and doing, I have an app on my phone that has a daily scripture. It has a devotion for that day. And so that's really helpful in terms of like starting my day off in a peaceful, even if I wake up and I know like I have this big thing at work that day and it's really going to be a stressful day. By starting off like that, I initially start my day off like removing anxiety, getting out of bed. I do that before I even get out of bed. I do my Holy Bible app, and it takes me through like 15 minutes of reading and a devotion and a prayer. And literally it says like, open your arms and give God whatever it is you're struggling with today. And so I start my day off doing that. So that's part of it. And then as I'm getting ready for work, I listen to another app. It's called Pep Talk, and it's a bunch of different people who have been successful or people who have gone through struggles and come out on the other side, who are giving you a pep talk for your day. And so literally I'm like getting ready, I'm like getting dressed, doing my hair and makeup, and I'm listening to this person like motivate me. So by the time I walk out my front door, I'm like flexing, like I'm going to kick this day in the butt. Right. Mm-hmm. So those are kind of things I build into my day. I also, one of the things I do for self-care is, I love live music. So I do a lot of that, just listening to music in general, but I also, love nature. So whether it's like running, playing sports, just going camping, I fit those times into my weekend, and it's become a lot easier in the last few years because my youngest kid just went to college this year. So a lot of people are like, you're an empty nester. Isn't that hard? And I'm like, actually, it's not. I enjoy watching my kids like figure out life. It's not always easy for them. And so there are times they do, reach out and ask for help, and we still like meet to go to church and stuff like that. But that's like part of the enjoyment for me, is like seeing them get out on their own and seeing what they can do. And I value like quiet time. So while it might seem that my schedule is so busy, and if people looked at my social media pages, they would be like, man, you're always on the go. But really, I'm not. There are days I like sleep in. There are days I am around people all day. So then I just go home and I don't talk to anyone, or I just watch TV or watch the news or whatever. So I've gotten better as I've gotten older at reading myself and understanding what I need. And so that's like the biggest advice I would give is, it's hard to sit with yourself sometimes in quiet, but you have to do that because you have to learn yourself to the point where like, oh, this is a good day for me, or this is not a good day, and I need to fit in something that's self-care for myself so that I'm better tomorrow.
Shoot, sometimes I even like when I'm in a car, I'll just turn the radio off, like, and just like really understand my thoughts, like especially like if I'm having one of those days where I feel some type of way and I don't know why I'm feeling that way. I'm like, yeah, I can't listen to music like right now. I gotta really sit here and analyze and figure out why my heart is heavy, you know what I'm saying? Or why my brain feels scrambled. So yeah, definitely thank you for that.
No problem. I think it's power in kind of creating a routine that kind of powers you up for the day or whatnot. You know what I'm saying? I think for those that are of the Christian faith, I think it is powerful to kind of start your day with a conversation with God and whatnot. And I do a not the pep talk app, but I do listen to a motivational speech every day from somebody like Eric Thomas. But
E.T.
something like that, and then even a workout for real. You know what I'm saying? I really have you feeling powered up for the day. And so yeah, I definitely think there's power in having a routine that kind of pumps you up for whatever the day is gonna bring. Right. And not just that, but I think it's good for your mental health. I think it's good for you mentally and physically and spiritually to have that routine.
And then I would add to that, like, what if you have a day where you're like, I can't do anything today, right? Some people will try to power through those days. That's not always a good thing. So, if I sense in one of my employees that, they're really struggling today, I'm like, I tell them without them even saying, I need to take a day off. I say, you need to go take the day off. Like, and on those days off, like, I don't want to hear from my employees. I mean, if they're reaching out, sharing a personal thing, that's different. But so I think also, no matter what position or what title you have, understanding that mental health days are okay. and making sure that is, which Dr. Mahdi does, making sure that's acceptable in your workplace makes people a lot more willing to take the downtime that they need when they need it.
That's beautiful.
I wish that could be implemented in all workplaces.
Speaking of workplaces, I'm currently in the Army, and one of the things that we have implemented now is a lot of things around building mental health. But I would assume when you were there, it probably wasn't a lot of that awareness with that, and with command not having that awareness and pushing, powering soldiers to do things, and it causing mental health strain. I'm curious of what was your experiences with that, and how it influenced your mental health, and even like how important it is that leadership has an awareness of the people under them and their mental health.
Yeah, so I went into the Army in 1994, so it was definitely pre talk about your mental health days. So for me, and I was an air defense artillery officer in the Army, so it was combat arms. There were less than 5% female in those units. We deployed all over the Middle East, and talking about your mental health really wasn't. We did other things. We like worked out, listened to music, tried to have as much fun at work as we could. And I was lucky that my second boss, so battalion commanders are kind of like the frontline leader for military officers. And for me, I had a really good battalion commander. My first boss was not good. I mean, not good for mental health at all. Like, definitely had no idea what we were doing on a daily basis, talked down to people, which, you know, the military has a culture of like that anyway, historically. You've seen the movies, you know, where the drill sergeant's like talking down to soldiers. But I had a boss, my second boss, his name's Carl, and he's actually still my professional mentor today. He's my daughter's godfather. So I met him when I was 23, and he did a great job of like getting to know soldiers enough so he knew some personal things about you. And he used that to stay connected to you, and he used that to motivate people. And he talked to us about, you know, when we were deployed. I had 2 kids when I was deployed. My oldest one, I missed his first birthday. I missed him starting to walk and starting to talk. So that alone, and so he would stay connected to me over that. So that was then, but you generally didn't talk about your mental health. I mean, if something you were expected to battle through, right? Even though my soldiers would share, you just, when you're deployed, you're together all the time. And that like combined mission really makes you close with each other. And so you generally do know everything that's going on with each other, like in terms of your mental health, but going outside of like that code of silence, going outside of that, you generally don't. You just kind of sit and talk about it and work through it with them. Now it's different. Like now, if you go to the VA in St. Louis, there's a behavioral health clinic, and everything overlaps. So if I come in for heart disease, for example, I see my heart disease doctor, but they also talk to me about my mental health in every appointment I'm in. So the mindset is shifted in terms of dealing with people's mental health and being more open about it. But still, I would still say it's still a huge issue, right? So the suicide rate in the military is still high. The divorce rate's still high. It's kind of similar to what you see in police officers and correctional officers. Those jobs where it's not always, it depends on who you have as your boss, whether it's safe or not. So.
Yeah, I was going to ask, since you say your first boss wasn't really the best, and looking outside in, I've never been in the military, but I had a couple family members that were in the military through different periods of time. Through your experiences with the military, was there any like trauma that you went through, especially having a boss that really didn't add to valuing your mental health and healing that?
So I would say I had him for such a short period of time. I just sensed that he really wasn't a good person or a good leader. So that that knocks your confidence down a little bit, because that was literally my first commander coming out of basic training. But there were other things that I was doing, or other people around me who were encouraging me. So it really wasn't that really wasn't traumatic for me in a way. It was other things like being less than 5% female. And so dealing with, some people who believed in that and were cheerleading you based on the fact that was part of it. But there were other things like deploying to the Middle East and working in countries that didn't respect women. And so that was, I was the commander of a unit in Saudi Arabia, and I had to cover my body and walk 10 feet behind the soldiers I was leading. So there were certain components of that, and then being in war, the things you saw that brought trauma, or leading soldiers through difficult times and seeing them struggle, and not having all the resources to be able to help them like I wanted to. So those were the things, being away from my family during some key times in their lives. Those were things that definitely hurt me from a mental health perspective.
That actually makes perfect sense. What are your hopes for the future of mental health advocacy and the destigmatization efforts of mental health for the city?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is the data is always where I start. So I'm seeing the number of overdose rates go down, seeing the number of ER visits for overdose go down, seeing mental health and anxiety visits go down. I think one of the things that bothers me the most is just on social media, if something's posted about the unhoused or mental health or someone acting erratically, that people always jump to some huge judgmental impression of that person. And so the biggest shift I want to see is the acceptance and an increase in the grace and compassion that people show to their fellow man, because that's one of the things that bothers me the most about St. Louis is just how negatively people talk about the city. And it's one of the reasons I came back to work for the city, because I want to be part of the shift in the impression of our city, whether it's crime or overdoses. So that's a part of it. I think also just one of the changes I want to see from mental health which is starting to happen, is just a collaborative effort between like grassroots community partners like Story Stitchers and the police and the Justice Center and health and the mayor's office, kind of all of us working together. And when we do that and we get out and talk about it publicly like we are today, I think that in itself, first of all, tells people we're all working together, and tells people that it's okay to talk about it. I think, getting Narcan out there, educating as many people as we can on it, which we've done a lot of lately. And then I think just linkage to care, education, outreach in the community, whether it's one of the biggest areas that is of concern to me is our youth, because while we're seeing some rates increase in our older population, a lot of that starts when you're young, right? Like knowing it's okay to talk about all the stress that I'm dealing with in my neighborhood or at home, and having someone who's trained in the schools to kind of take that information and say like, okay, what can we really do for this child? How can we coach them on some coping skills, and what resources can we bring to them to set them up for the best mental health perspective that we can from a young age. And so I think the fact that you guys at your age are willing to talk about it, it's also getting younger kids to talk about it in language that they understand, and getting them to know that, helping them understand that like we're here to support them, that no one's judging them, that we're here to supply the resources that they might need, even if their parents can't, right? Because sometimes that's a whole nother piece of it that they're dealing with. So youth is a big thing. Another category for me that's huge is LGBTQIA. We'll be out at Pride this weekend, downtown St. Louis, but just some gaps in services that we're seeing in that population, or stigma, so much that they're not willing to share their stories. That's another kind of focus area that I have. So obviously driving down the numbers, helping people understand the resources that they have available, and making them comfortable to reach out with the stories that they have so that we can help them.
Yeah.
This special edition of StitchCast Studio is supported in part by YouthBridge Community Foundation through Think Big for Kids. Story Stitch's creative youth development programs are supported in part by the Lewis Prize for Music's 2021 Accelerator Award. The mission of the Lewis Prize is to partner with leaders who create positive change by investing in young people through music. Additional support for StitchCast Studio and Story Stitch's programs is provided by the Regional Arts Commission, the City of St. Louis Office of Violence Prevention, in partnership with the St. Louis Board of Aldermen through the 2024-2025 programs to reduce crime among at-risk youth, and Tegna Foundation. St. Louis Story Stitcher Studio, the center, is supported in part by Kransberg Arts Foundation, where Story Stitchers is a proud resident organization. Thank you for listening.
They say who that, but you already knew that. That be them story stitches, story stitches, story stitches, story stitches, story.